Let's let everything catch up. Let's let everything catch up. What's up, folks? So, another Tuesday, another insane day for me. But what's new, right? We'll let uh, we'll let folks get in, get past the usuals, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully, notifications go out. Let's see, what can we fill some time with? Um, Yeah, there's a question in there asking if I'm opening a store. Danica Aquatics Bentley probably does not have time. Man, what? How accurate? I'd have to like quit my entire job, wouldn't I, to open a store? But we'll talk about that. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's part of the topic. It's there for a reason. If you've been watching for a while, you know the answer to that. You just know the answer. But trust me, I think the topic's worthwhile. So let's see here. Some small updates. Tonight's minor league baseball hat is the Lansing Lugnuts. Just if you're curious, I think I actually have like one person who asked me specifically if I was getting this. So, yes is the answer there. But what do we got? Let me give you a little update on my dog. I had surgery maybe while we let some stuff happen. Uh, she's doing very very good. The only potential problem we're dealing with, which I have to take her back to the vet, is she might have at the very end of everything uh, ended up with some kind of infection of some form. We're not sure. She was looking really really good, and in general is doing pretty well. Just she's a little sore and inflamed. Just got to figure that out. This one dog, man, it's gonna kill me. It's just like crazy stuff. Uh, let's see here. So the other thing is my flute will flex half full or half empty. I would argue it's like 90% full right now. Thank you very much. And I'm a positive guy, so I look at things as full, not empty. Uh, what size hat have to get you an Asheville tourist hat? I've actually been looking at getting myself an Asheville tourist hat. I'm taking a small break from picking up different hats right now. Um, because because I need a good hat rack, and right, like I have it on a basically an old cat tree from when we had cats in the house, and I need a better organization for my hats before I buy any more. It's really what it comes down to. Somebody's commenting about hockey. So, like, I have, of course, a Seattle Kraken's hat, but mentioning that we have three WHL teams out here. Um, yeah, I mean, I would probably, if anything, because I live extremely close to them, if I was going to do something that wasn't the Kraken, it'd probably be a Thunderbirds hat. I live literally 10 minutes away from where the Thunderbirds play. And when I was going to high school, I knew several people on the team. When I worked in radio, the sister station to the radio station I worked for was the broadcast station for the Seattle Thunderbirds. So I used to get tickets to go to their games for free as a part of the station, which was really, they were insanely good seats. But you know, with non-pro hockey, it's pretty easy to get the good seats, not very expensive. But yeah, the Florence Yalls, that sounds fantastic. So this like deep down, if I could travel everywhere, what I would do is I would go travel the states to meet fish people, but we'd all meet at a minor league baseball game. Just go out to a park because you know they're all chill and fun. Just hang out, enjoy a game. I'd probably buy a new hat because I'm a psycho. I would just babble fish while like have a hot dog or some peanuts or something. It'd be fantastic. Sadly, I worked way too much for that. So one more update, then we get on the topic. Been doing some good work on the online aquatic horticulture program. Of course, Aquarium Co-op's doing some crazy like online fish club, so hopefully he doesn't like just beat me into the pavement when it comes to this. But I've only been working on this for a while, but I thought I would show you guys some stuff. Just little preview. right? Uh, like this. So this is just a like small section of our new plant entry form. So when you are going through and entering plants, it's going to look something like this. Nice and simple, easy to navigate. Just little peek, right? Just to see what you're staring at. And then for fun, we'll do this one too, which is a little like mission statement off the website that we're working on. So hopefully, I think we're looking at like a month to have everything done. But my goal is to do it right as opposed to do it fast. But my hope is that in July we get to launch. But we'll see how things come up. We're at the like tail end of some of the harder stuff as far as implementation is concerned. I had to do I had a long conversation with my dev Sunday evening, and there was a lot of stuff we had to talk about, and like where some of the basically we're in one of the hard parts where we have a lot of stuff set up right, but now we have to integrate a few things in order to make sure that everything hooks up together correctly. So that's hopefully we can get that done in the next like 2 weeks, and then have some window time to start some reasonable testing. But we've already done some tests on what's in place so far, and so far it's starting to work. So that's good news, right? Let's get on the topic, shall we? Building a fish store. What could go wrong? And no, for those that are like who might not know, I'm not the person who's probably ever going to open a fish store. So the thing is, and let me explain that. I personally, while I love fish as a hobby, I would not be that person who wants to own a fish store. I would rather work in far different capacities when it comes to the fish hobby. Things that are better to my skill set. Working a retail fish store, not my skill set, right? I'm a highly technical person. I've worked in marketing, and while I'm very happy to help people and talk to people about fish, to hopefully persuade people not to do things like, let's put discus in a goldfish bowl with no heat, right? Crazy stuff that's bad for the fish. I'm very happy to do those things. But the things that you need to do to make a fish store successful, not my jam. And we'll explain really fast, right? So this is part of the conversation. Part of this conversation is really important. There is a lot of work that goes into a fish store. And I mean, Corey from Aquarium Co-op has an amazing video on his channel that talks about these kind of things and goes over his experience opening a fish store. But think about it now. If you have, say, 20 tanks, right? You're in my position. You got about 20 tanks. Think about what it takes to maintain 20 tanks. If you want to open a fish store, you probably need like 60, 100, maybe even more, right? It depends on the size of the space, inventory you're keeping, where you are. There's a lot of factors. The video that came out last Saturday, we had a short interview with my buddy Jason over at Redfish Bluefish. And in the future, I'm hoping that I'll have an interview with Robert, the manager for Aquarium Co-op's actual physical store. He's a good friend of mine. We've talked about it in the past, but he recently got married. He's about to have a kid. That store is crazy busy all the time. So trying to find time for both of us to sit down and have a conversation has been tough, admittedly. And I need to restart that conversation now that we're in summer when fish stores get a little less busy, although the Aquarium Co-op's like always busy, right? But try to have that conversation because there's a lot of things that you can't anticipate if you haven't worked at a fish store. And this is a big thing that a lot of people preach, is like, don't open something that you've never worked in. Like, if you ever watched, your Kitchen Nightmares or anything like that, it's like you get all these people that open restaurants that have never worked in a restaurant before, and they just have no clue what they're doing. It's very similar to that, right? In that you really should work in something like that before you try to open that business, because you stand to fail if you don't. Now, one of the biggest things to me that stood out in my short time interview with Jason over the weekend, right, is that we talked about some of the fish that are most popular in the shop versus what's not selling well. And I think there's a key thing that Jason mentioned that I want to kind of highlight, right? Your kind of bread and butter stuff, and you'll notice this if you ever watch like the Aquarium Co-op unboxings and stuff like that. Things like tetras and guppies. Your average foot traffic person, your random person just going to walk into your store that, like, maybe it has no clue that you have a YouTube or that you've been here for 3 years or whatever it may be. They're going to most likely be looking at your tetras, your guppies, maybe your angelfish. And they're not going to look at things like rainbow fish, apistogramma, crebensis, a lot of those things that, like, we, as more dedicated hobbyists, go down a rabbit hole for, right? This is where, like, specialists come into play. People like me, like, I love rainbow fish. That's obvious. You guys know that. I have tons of rainbows. Very little beyond rainbows. Right? My friend Jason is a huge apistogramma fan. He carries a lot of really rare apistogramma in his store. But one of the things he mentioned in that little interview was like, the apistos don't sell very well to the average person walking into the store. Things like some Corydoras and tetras and this stuff, those all do very well. But it's his online business where you get the apistogramma demand, but it's still nowhere near as high as, like, a cardinal tetra or autocinclus, right? Our more common bread and butter can go in pretty much any tank for planted tanks, which is his target, right? He's into, like, aquascape tanks and stuff like that. So one of the things that I think a lot of people will fall into is a trap about, like, building a fish store is not understanding what the average person walking through your door wants. And there's some great comments in chat, but, like, you'll get, I think this is, Stephen P says this, I think this is really relevant to conversation. I was on a live stream panel where they were all like, I don't like rainbows. They have a weird shape where it's all body shape. It's like, I was ready to throw hands, right? For us specialists, be like, everything's got a weird body shape in fish. Everything's kind of weird. Look at, like, your cichlids that have the big, like, nuchal hump on their head, right? Like, they look like I've got some gigantic tumor growing out of their head if you don't know what it is. That's weird, but some people love that. But your average person going through a door is probably like, oh, I know guppies, or I know tetras, right? Those are the things that your average person is more into. I talked to him about a fish that was in there. Was it Miguelito Corydora? Bigger bodied Corydora, like big chunky guys. And if I had space, I probably would have bought them. But I don't have space right now because I like the way they looked. He had them in store basically since he first got his first fish order. So months they hadn't sold. He'd sold one out of, like, I think 15 or 20, somewhere in that range. But it's a Corydora. It should sell, right? Well, the body size thing starts coming into play. It's a lot bigger. It's a lot chunkier. It needs a bigger tank. It's harder for the average person walking in off the street who's going to look at something like a 10, 15, or 20 gallon tank to fit that fish in their tank. And this is just local. Think about how different it is if you go to, say, like the Midwest, where there's a lot of African cichlids and hard water fish, right? Your region tells you a lot about the fish that are popular because, one, it's probably all about the water. If you don't have to fight your water, it's a lot easier for the average person to be like, yeah, I can keep that fish, especially if the guy at the store is like, oh yeah, no, our water locally is great. You basically just pour it out of the tank, dechlorinate it, and you're fine. You know, those kind of things. There's lots of stuff we can fall into because we can think to ourselves, I love rainbow fish. I want to do a store with lots of rainbow fish in it. And then you find out most people come in and they're like, I don't know, what's this silver minnow thing you got here? Oh, well, that's a this. What makes it different than that other silver minnow over there, right? Because the age that you get most of these fish, they don't tend to have a lot of color. And it's hard to explain to a person coming in your door, like, well, you just wait a year and it's going to be amazing. Like, a year on a silver fish and it's going to... No. How about that fish right there, the bright yellow one with the red fins, like a lemon tetra, right? You know, or some danios where they're obvious and have color. Things like that. So I think one of the things that people can fall into, because there's this big dream in hobbyists. A lot of hobbyists have dreams. I'm the weirdo in the group, right? I'm the one who's like, I definitely don't want a fish store. I don't want to own a fish store. I don't want to work in a fish store. It's not my jam, right? Would I eventually be interested in working in the fish industry? Maybe, but it'd have to be like the perfect gig, right? It just have to be perfect to my skills and what I enjoy doing. Which is hard because what I enjoy doing is basically testing and professionally breaking things. So, you know, you get these things where you can fall in these traps where it's like, I really like this fish, or like, this fish is really great. I'm sure lots of people will like it. And then your average customer has no interest in it. Well, that is something that's just sitting there soaking up money and tank space, right? One thing you have to know is how to rotate product relatively quickly. But at the same time, like, let's think about this. What happens if somebody walks into your store and there's a bunch of algae on your tanks? Are they going to look at what you have and know just like, you're going to get algae? The average person is looking like, if that tank's not sterile and clean, they might think, well, I don't know how healthy these fish are, or I don't know, this place is dirty. Right? Not necessarily to the whole fact that like algae just naturally happens in fish tanks. And for some people, it's a good sign to have a little bit. Things like that, right? You get things that you might not think about with dedicated hobbyists, and you're going to have those dedicated hobbyists that'll be your customers too. They'll probably be some of your best customers. But sometimes they're also your worst customer because those dedicated hobbyists are more picky. And a lot of times they just kind of want to come in and babble fish. I'm often in that boat in that I'll go to a shop and I'll only need like a couple things of fish food or something small, but I'll want to talk to, or in some cases get talked to, and that's a rarer case in the sense of like, the last time, let me give you an example. Last time I went into Aquarium Co-op, I was buying stuff for a video that comes out this Saturday. I think you guys are going to like it. It's simple but good. And one of the employees, Thatch, for those who are local, who's a good friend of mine, awesome human being, asking me questions about plants. And kind of joking about like, while you're here, fix all the problems with all of my plants, right? Joking with me, and we kind of had a good laugh, but then a couple serious questions and me helping out a little bit before then having Thatch help me pick up the stuff I needed out of the shop. So you can have that, right? Where you're dedicated hobbyists or your club members or things like that, if you have those things, they might take up time. And the more time you spend with that hobbyist, as much fun as that might be, what customers are maybe not getting the amount of care they need in order to make sure that you get the best sale you can. And I know people are gonna be like, talking about sales. Trust me, this matters so much. Redfish, Bluefish, Jason has entered chat. What's up, buddy? And I'm sure he can get to this because, like, when you had me, you had Alex for a little while. Aquatics was there. Northwest Aqua Hobby, Will, who I just recently met because of that visit, and now I've been like binge watching his channel. Super nice dude. Probably eventually go talk to him for a video. We had basically 4 YouTubers. Oh, plus the store owner, who's also a YouTuber. And granted, we're all small YouTubers, but still, all there. And Jason had the foresight to, customer comes in, ignore everything those dumb YouTubers are babbling about, pay attention to the customer. Help the customer, answer questions. You just want to browse? Cool. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm here to help you, tell you about a fish, whatever you need. Right? And then can kind of like lightly pay attention to us, but watching for customers at all times. And one of the problems with like us dumb YouTubers or us dumb hobbyists is we can be very easy to want to engage in a fun conversation. But the second you ignore a customer, that's a lost sale. And more importantly, that could be a lost several sales down the line, right? Because if you get that person who gets one bad experience, maybe that person was going to buy a tank, build a this, do a that, blah, 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 right? And then down the road, they get their friend into it. So it can be many sales lost off one customer you might not have paid attention to. So a lot of times us riffraff can be a problem for your fish store. And then of course there's like a million problems we could go over, of course, but I think it's relevant to think about those things. Now, thankfully, I have people that are willing to open fish stores to where I don't have to. But more accurately, like, I'm very lucky. I'm in an area where there's a lot of very, very good fish stores. And we even had some new ones open up. You know, I went to another fish store recently. It's saltwater based, but a new place that's fairly close to my house. And it's nice. It's clean. It's kind of like the new age smart mentality about how to do a fish store. And despite me going in there, I paid attention not to what was in tanks and stuff. They had a small freshwater section, and I kind of paid attention to that. But one thing I watched while I was in there was how the employees paid attention to the other customers. Because that tells me a lot about how well a store has a chance to succeed. Right? And this shop has multiple people working there right off the start. You know, and so they're a little better funded, or maybe just like have friends all going together in a business. I wasn't sure. I didn't ask those kind of questions. But it's one of those things where it's like, I watched how quickly they paid attention to customers and those kind of things, because it tells me whether or not that place can succeed. And the answer, thankfully, was they did a pretty good job. They probably will do a very great job. But if you or I were to open a fish store, would we do that? Would we be that cognizant? Would we be able to afford an employee right away? Probably not. That's one of the hardest parts. There's big costs associated with opening a fish store. So there's lots of things. And what's the lesson here? Is it just like, it's impossible to open a fish store? No. The important lesson is really simple. Support your local fish store if you have it. If you don't, and you're thinking to yourself, I could be that fish store, take your time, plan. Because the more prepared you go into things, the greater your chance of success. If you're a big hobbyist and you're like, I'm just going to open a fish store, and you do it ragtag out of your garage, or you just go find whatever place you can possibly find first, and maybe you find something that, oh, this place will be perfect, but it costs a lot more than you can probably afford. You have huge risks right off the bat of not being able to make it because you put too much cost on yourself. You know, I think one of the things that was interesting about talking to Jason when we first did that first video, when there's like tanks still on the concrete floor, and He's just starting to move in. Part of the luck of everything for him opening a store was a spot opening that had overall a really, really good cost for him to make it possible to run for a while and get going. Right? If you move into some place that's going to cost you $10,000 a month, think about on all your other costs. If it costs you $10,000 a month while you're setting the store up, how likely are you to get to a point of profitable, let alone enough money for you to actually live as a person, if your base cost is 10 grand a month versus, maybe you find somewhere a little less obvious, not right on the main drag, not quite as new a building, smaller space, whatever it may be, and it only costs you $1,000 a month or $500 a month or whatever it may be, whatever's appropriate for your area, right? Where it's way, way, way more economical. There's so many factors. So my biggest thing to any of you hobbyists that are like, I want to open a fish store one day. One, I respect you, right? Because having the love for this hobby that that gets you to the point of going like, I want to do this for a living, I respect you. Because I love this hobby a ton, but I am not that far, right? I would happily do something within this hobby as a job, but owning a fish store is not it. So if you have the guts to want to have that dream, I respect you. But my biggest advice to you is this: plan. I cannot tell you the number of phone calls I've had with Jason, just giving him even some tips that work really, really well at building a fish room level as opposed to a store. All this kind of stuff to make sure optimum chance to succeed. All right, with that, we'll get off topic and we'll go to questions. There'll be some adding Bentley Pasco. That's the easiest way. It highlights your name, makes it super easy for me to see stuff. First, of course, Mike, the Fish Tank Barn, my good friend. Thanks for the $5 super chat, buddy. The Blue Guppy Fund. Mine are coming tomorrow. Ooh. I'm glad you got some, dude. I really hope you like the fish. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I have talked to people, and when they finally get a hold of those fish, they'll tell you, you are so right. You cannot appreciate that fish on camera. There is so much that you miss that when you see with a human eye, no matter how good your camera is, it's stunning. I had a guy locally that I made he waited like 2.5 months, and he's a local club member and all that stuff. I've seen him at club meetings. He's like, hey, can I get fish from you? I was super busy. I finally met him. I think he was like, yeah, I only want 2 boys and 3 females or something like that. Just start small. I think I took him 20 fish. Because it was just my way to say, I'm sorry for waiting so long. And a lot of them were babies and juveniles that got in nets, but I still took him a good number of fish. And he sent me a mail, I think a week later. It was like, you are so right, man. There is so much color you just can't appreciate in pictures or in video. It's incredible. So it's one of those things where every time I hear that from somebody who gets an opportunity to get these fish, whether it's from me or someone else who happens to have them, I always feel really good because that's what made me fall in love with them. Right? One of those things. One of those things. All right, let's jam some questions. There's one really early I want to hit, and then I'll get the rest of them. Because even Susan from SLC Aquatics, who has just taken off, but she kind of pointed to me like, hey, don't miss this one, Bentley. Okay, so from Tatiana, I hope you're still here, Tatiana. I have a question about skimmers. I have an ADA Vupa. I'm not sure which one that is. I'd have to look it up. In a 44-gallon tank, but I still get that horrible-looking foam protein buildup. Any suggestions? So the way that you stop that foam is usually extra surface agitation. So if you can get a little bit more ripple at the top of your water, that's what breaks that up. Because that protein film is from not enough movement in the water and it settles. If you have enough of that agitation, it helps keep kind of continually mix it into the water and you don't see it. The other thing you can do is you can get fish that actually eat that film. A great example would be mollies. Mollies actually will actively eat that protein film off of your water surface if you're trying to keep the water more still. Now, in general, this is kind of where skimmers come into play, but usually you need a reasonable water flow. And like some of the skimmer attachments and stuff, they aren't that big, so they only suck in so much water at a time, and it doesn't create a whole lot of surface agitation. This is more easily accomplished, like very similar. If you look at my Flex, right, you have these little like jet heads that come off the pump, and if I angle those up and try to keep them more toward the surface, they agitate the surface of the water better, and that helps prevent that. But in the case of like your ADA tanks, where they're rimless and they're kind of open top, that will also cause more evaporation. So you kind of have a give and take, so to speak. You can get rid of it by doing more agitation, but just know that you'll have more evaporation when you do so. And if that becomes a problem, or maybe it's not something that the filter produces enough output, or the outflow nozzles you have can't really handle it. If you want a specific look, like you want to go with the super pretty glass and all that with the big bells and all that kind of stuff, then we might have to just kind of go, I only see that film from the top, and as long as I'm looking at my aquarium from the side, I don't really see it. I know it sucks though, because like I personally hate that film, so that's why I very frequently have good surface agitation and don't mind having like air bubbles and stuff in my tank, because it helps prevent that. But that's a lot of personal choice, right? The Fishy Mailman. I almost played in the IHL, but I joined the Army instead. Hockey was a part of my life for a long time. Gotta learn playoff hockey is on. Man, I can't wait, because like and I know this is not fish related, but what do you do? This is just it's part of me, right? It's how we do this. You get to know the psycho behind the camera. But I think one of the things that's most interesting to me about hockey is it is so easy for people to not understand the like ludicrous amount of conditioning that hockey players have to have, because hockey is so intense on your cardio side of things, which is why there's so many like shift changes and stuff like that. And for people who like have never watched hockey, you'll frequently see people change off the ice. That's because you run out of gas so fast in all that gear, pushing around as much as you do. You just have to have like insanely durable legs in hockey. And I really appreciate that part of the sport, because it's something that's really easy to overlook. You don't see like how athletically gifted some of the hockey players are in their like bulky jerseys and all their pads. And there's always the joke of like, I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out. Which, to be fair, I kind of like older school hockey in some ways, where that is almost applicable. But man, I got kudos to you, dude. I got kudos. Paul Soltero, what could go wrong? The livestock order could be screwed up, or worse, there's still no tanks available. No tanks, no fish. Yeah, man. Jimmy P mentioned, I want to go to this. YouTube made aquarium co-op. Can I present this? I think it is not one made the other. I think they mutually benefited, in that the store benefited from Corey being smart about YouTube, because what started and launched his channel into a bigger stratosphere is that he had a store. I think if Corey was just a hobbyist at home and you didn't get the peeks inside the store and all the things that are tied to it, and granted, this is just marketing in the grand scheme of things, right? I can't tell you, I had this conversation with Alex from Secret History while we were waiting for ferries in my car going out to Redfish Bluefish, where we're kind of the weirdos in that, unlike a lot of fish YouTubers, we're not really selling anything. You know, we don't have like a Get Gills store where we sell fish and plants or things like that. Now, I have sold plants in the past, yes, but most of that was local. I very rarely shipped anything. But you know, we don't have a side business as a store or something like that. So we're the weirdos, and we were kind of like making a joke at how like it's really common for people that are new to your channel to be like, cool, so what do you sell? And then you're like, well, nothing really. It's like, I get it all the time. Hey, do you sell fish? I want to buy rainbows. What rainbows do you have in stock right now? And like very often it's like, none. I I don't really sell fish that often, and when I do, I sell them through a store, and that store is the one selling the fish. I just deliver fish to a store every once in a while when I can. Right? We're like the weirdos out there. But I would argue that because Corey had his store, we as the audience got to have a peek behind the curtain and watch this store that had some notoriety locally become more. And there's a fusion between YouTube and aquarium co-ops, like their digital presence and their physical presence, that is, I would say, I would argue that's like the special sauce that makes the aquarium co-op taco, because Corey's such a taco nerd, and yet not at the same time, because he likes the least authentic tacos. But I'll razz him for that later. But I think it's actually a fusion of the two things, because you have like YouTube is your marketing, it's your advertising, it's how people get to know you, get to know your store, what you're about. But without that store, you don't have any of that content, right? So I think it's both. And I wanted to comment on that because I saw that and I felt there was a relevant thing to say about that. Sean Stenson, Bentley have a single 4-foot Fluval 3.0 on a 75-gallon, few inches, raised in a few inches for an epiphyte skate. Yeah, I think if you were to raise it up, the thing is, like, you can also drop the power because epiphytes don't need that much. And what you could do is rely on a lot of power from one part of the spectrum and dim down a lot of the rest. So an example would be something like this. If you put the pure white up to like 75, 80, 100%, whatever you may be, but then like your warm, your cool, your pinks are all in like that 40 to 50 range, so they're just barely supplementing, right? You can do something like that, or again, raise it up a little bit, take it off so it's not quite as intense, it's pulling that light a little bit far away. It can work just fine for an epiphyte scape. Brian Scott, I actually went to high school, well, I guess I knew Brian's was way before high school, but I went to high school and such with a guy named Brian Scott. I used to sit to lunch with him almost every day. So if you happen to be that same Brian Scott, I'd be amazed. But I don't think he's a fish person. Anyway, your passion for rainbow fish inspired me to add a school of 7 Madagascar rainbows to my community tank. Amazing fish. Thanks for all you do. I also love Madagascar rainbows. It's just one of the fish I haven't picked up yet because I went for some more exotic stuff for what little space I had. The guy saying 20 tanks has little space. I know it sounds crazy, but that's that's what you do, right? Mike from the Fish Tank Barn, you've just killed my dreams of a Goodyear fish store. I mean, Corey's trying to introduce more live bearers and Goodyears and stuff like that into his store through his urban fish farm, is that what he calls it? I think that's his ultra fish room, as I prefer to think of it, but that's because I'm a tech nerd and that's how we work. But yeah, I wish people like Goodyears more than what seems to be the case, because they're really neat fish, and you would be helping prevent fish from going extinct, which is also super cool. All right, I'm gonna try catch up. I know, chat. I know I'm always behind. I know. Jason mentioning that the costs of opening a fish store are huge. Oh god, he's invoking a certain person, but I mean, opening fish stores is a very expensive thing. Joe Davis, the shoddily managed fish store closest to me recently changed management, unbeknownst to me. Visited on the weekend and was shook. Complete 180. Well, first off, fantastic for whoever realized that there's a problem, went in, and was able to fix it. Hopefully, that continues, right? It continues to be amazing. It turns from that story where you're like, man, it's kind of just the only option I've got, and turns into, man, I'm so glad I have this fish store near me. Because like I'm pretty lucky. I've got a lot of good fish stores in my area, some of which I drive kind of far to. Wait an hour and a half to 2 hours for a ferry for. but it's one of those things where like I have a luxury in the Northwest where we have lots of good fish stores, and I wish more people had that same luxury, one, it'd be great. It'd be great for the hobby, right? Because the more good fish stores you have, the more likely you're going to have more hobbyists. But man, I really hope that continues. Seriously, Joe, like, let me know. I'd like to know, like, 3 months from now if that store keeps being amazing or just keeps getting better, because that'd be interesting to me, and I'm curious where that store is at. So you perk my interest when things like that happen. Fish tank bar. This is a really relevant thing to our conversation. Is that I would be afraid that opening a fish store would kill the hobby element for me. Now, you're actually hitting on the main reason why opening a fish store has no appeal to me. The second it becomes my job to maintain a bunch of fish and fish tanks, it stops being a hobby and it stops being fun. Now, there's lots of things you can do within fish, especially, people who've done marketing and stuff like that that aren't a fish store and don't ruin that joy of keeping fish, but still related, that can be fun. Kylan Landry, have you tested your Tesla so far? So for those who didn't see the video on Alex's channel where he spoiled the thumbnail that I have a Tesla. I have a Tesla. I bought it used and I got an insanely good deal on it. I spent almost a year trying to find it. And part of that is just because before that I have a V8 Mustang GT, which goes in the gallons per mile metric. It has horrible gas mileage. And I wanted something a little bit better for ferrying my dogs, my lady, and going to work. I wanted something better. I still have a Mustang as my fun drive, by the way, because it's been paid for years now. I've owned the car for 15 years. But yeah, I mean, I've monkeyed with it a lot. I've monkeyed with that thing a lot. There's things that are great about Teslas, and there's things that suck about Teslas. It's like any car. There's your positives and your negatives. I grew up in a hot rod shop, so it's kind of weird and alien not having an internal combustion engine, but at the same time, as a tech nerd, I find it very appealing. There's lots of stuff that eventually can be really, really cool about the technology that's there, and in several other people that are making electric cars now, but it's got lots of qualms too. In the Seattle area, it's far more feasible than in other areas because there's chargers all over the place. But if there weren't chargers all over the place, I wouldn't even consider it. Because one of the biggest hindrances to those cars is charge time. And the benefit of how much cheaper it is to power an electric car versus buying gas doesn't matter if you don't have the charge options. If your only charge option is your house, and you have to spend quite a bit to install things to get charging at your home, which I don't have. I just charge at my work because I'm lucky we have chargers at work. But yeah, I mean, I think without a robust network, it would be impossible for me to ever consider a vehicle like that. Filigree Aquatics. Is Aquarium Co-op an actual co-op, or is it just the name? Are all the employees owners? No, it's just the name. So he's actually said a few times in I can't remember. There's some videos I remember watching that if he could go back and rename it, he wouldn't name it Aquarium Co-op. He would have named it something different, just because he gets questions like that. But I think, to my knowledge, it's just Corey, and he has one silent partner who did the initial investment to help him open the store. And this is all from his story, and I just have stupid memory about this, but his initial partner gave him something like $50,000 to open the store when it started. And then they had an agreement and all this kind of stuff, but yeah. Yeah, it's just him and the one partner. The partner owns, I think, it's 20 or 25%, something like that. And Corey owns the rest. Yeah. Let's see. Nick Hager. This is somebody we're working with the new series. One of his tanks is going to be one of the very first ones we talk about. My tank is starting to look better, bro. Super stoked to have your guidance. Flex 32 and CO2. Yeah, I used to have CO2 on this Flex 15. And Tatiana's mentioning, glad to see you're still here, so you did hear my answer. That with the fish behind me is trying to steal the show. The fish behind me are always trying to steal the show. Anytime I do a video in front of the tank where Danger Noodle is. Danger Noodle is like always trying to steal the show. But yeah, Flex. I like the Flex a lot. I had a little like paintball CO2 on this thing for a while, and then I realized that like the plants grew so fast it was like untenable. So I removed it and went to complete when I changed my scape and went to like all crypts and stuff and went more low tech and simple. Even though you guys know I hate the low tech high tech terms, I changed for that purpose. Mostly because I wanted it to be simple. I didn't want to have to do a lot of maintenance. I just wanted it to exist and be happy in my own like little personal enjoyment tank. But then I started live streaming. Now it's in weekly. You guys see the algified mess that is this tank. But I actually kind of like all that algae because there's algae eaters in there and they constantly have something to graze on. So I just don't clean it. I know it sounds terrible, but I have a purpose in this crazy brain. I do things for reasons. They just might be crazy reasons. Joe Davis mentioned that the store is in Cranbrook, British Columbia, Canada. BC's not terribly far from me, although it depends on how far that is from the border and all that kind of stuff. Brian Scott, unless you went to high school in northeastern Illinois, it was a different Brian Scott. Yeah, I went to high school at Lake Washington High School, the Kangaroos. Weird mascot for a U.S. high school, I know. In Kirkland, Washington. So definitely different Brian Scott. But like I said, pretty sure it wasn't. But you never know. You never know. There's actually somebody who follows my channel that I did go to high school with. And she ran into my channel like by pure happenstance and had sent me a message like, hey, it's this person from da-da-da. I was like, oh my God, how small is that likelihood to ever occur? Let's see here. Naidu, how often do you recommend to calibrate a pH controller? I have a Milwaukee MC122. Well, I would have to use pH controllers to give you a reasonable recommendation, right? Honestly, I would be looking at the Milwaukee's recommendation guidelines. I don't use them because I run so light amounts of CO2 in my tanks that a pH controller is not necessary. I think you tend to run into more pH controllers and stuff like that when people are pushing higher amounts of CO2 in their tank, where I run such a small amount that it really barely impacts the pH overall, and my fish just don't care. They're so used to it. So I don't know. I would seriously just look at all of Milwaukee's paperwork and see what they recommend. If they recommend once a month, I would do it once a month. If they recommend once a year, I would check it once a year. I would imagine that you're probably reasonably safe to like check it every couple months just to be safe, but you should be able to identify with your eyes if something's off by the way your fish act, or like it starts getting too acidic, things like that. You should be able to see it, right? Then that should trigger you like, I better check this out. Casville, how's it going, man? I've not answered a question from you in a little bit, but I know you've been in chat, so that's cool. Appreciate seeing you. Can you run CO2 on a tank till the tank runs dry? Just get all the plants to fill in and overtake algae, then just turn the light down some and ease up on the ferts once it's dry. Yes. So let me give you a scenario where I think this is actually a smart idea. Now, granted, you want to run the CO2. If you're doing this, run your CO2 at a light amount, right? I would not push a ton of CO2 and then have it run out and suddenly be off, because your plants were going to grow in a way that they get so accustomed to having that CO2 that you could run into huge deficiency issues after it runs out. So if you had, say, a 75-gallon tank and you ran 2 bubbles a second, you could do something like a small CO2 tank out of a 5-pounder, or even just like a little paintball tank. Where I would do this would be to push a tank through its initial setup. So if I have lots of plants that need to convert, maybe I did a lot of tissue culture or something like that. If I were planning to just gas for a little bit to help those plants settle in and adjust and convert, and then remove it and walk away and dial it back down to the low tank, right? that'd be the way that I would do it personally. Krager's fish, love the fish photobombing above the Fritz bottle. Yeah. Yeah, that's my that's a reticulated SAE, just in case you guys are wondering. They're active little buggers. But I have 2 in that tank. I don't have very many fish in that tank anymore, but eventually what I'm going to do is once all these fish do their thing, however long that takes, I'll probably actually tear my flex down, and I think I'll be modifying it heavily before I ever set it back up. And somebody had asked if I had seen the Lifeguard Aquatics full view tank. That's the one that's like the angular tank, right? I have seen those. Actually, they keep them at a fish store that's pretty local to me. But I don't know. Like, I like the flex with the weird bow front like this instead of like this. But other than that, like, I just prefer a more rectangular tank. I don't know that I would do too many weird shape tanks. The more that I do fish, the more I appreciate simplicity and not going like crazy with too much stuff, right? I do as many things as I can simply so that I can be crazier with like my plants or my fish, right? I can not worry about like, oh, this crazy tank. Well, what happens if the fish goes too much into this little corner or whatever, you know, some stupid thing to worry about. But yeah, those lifeguard tanks, you can find them on like, I think it's Lifeguard Products is their website. I believe they sell them. I don't know how well they ship, but some local stores carry them too. I've had them. There's a store basically down the hill from me where I tend to buy my frozen food called Sierra Fish and Pets, and that's where I've bought them. I buy my frozen food, and I've seen those tanks for sale. Oh man, Alex is in chat too. Got the secret history in the house. We got almost everybody that I went and saw a couple weekends ago go in chat. Now we just need Hoon Aquatics to show up. Dr. Black's here. He'll be coming up very, very soon. Good to see you, buddy. My Australian friend. Filigree Aquatics, Bentley, congrats, dude. Tesla will probably be our next one too, or maybe even that of the new EV F-150. You know, I will say this, like, part of me working my brains out at my new job made it possible to buy that vehicle, because they're not cheap. Even me getting what is an insane deal. I want to be really clear. I bought my car for like about $15,000 less than what it would sell for today at the same time. I got very, very lucky at the right time in the human malware when like no one was buying used cars. Barely anybody was going anywhere. It was at the height of unemployment. So like I had all the right factors going for me. I could not afford that car right now. No way, shape, or form. It'd be impossible. But I got lucky. It's really what it comes down to. I will say this, the new Ford Mach-E, so the Mustang-built EV, I've seen a couple of them driving around. They actually look really cool. But I'm a weirdo. I love that Cybertruck. I think that like giant hulking stainless steel thing looks just like if John DeLorean like had some kind of fever dream and made a truck. I kind of like that big dorky thing, but I doubt I'd ever be able to afford it. So there's that. All right, let me hunt down some questions before we go. We got about I would say 10 minutes or so. So if you got questions, if I missed your question, post it again at Bentley Pasco. Makes it super easy to see. I'm going to dig up. Oh, yeah. Kylan Landry. Are your spotted garas in a group or separate? They're in a group. So I have 4 of them in with the Guppy Mansion. And I very frequently see 3 of them swimming together at a minimum. Like sometimes I'll see a couple pairs, but usually it's like 3 and then one guy just like wanders off on his lonesome and then like realizes he's on his lonesome and goes and finds the rest of them. They're super social fish. They like being together. I would not suggest getting one. I would try to make sure you get a few. I think like 3 is a pretty good number, but if you worry about like the Gara aggression, like that goes between Garas, they're less aggressive than some of like the Pandagaras and bigger ones. But if you're worried about that, then the more the merrier, right? It's kind of like African cichlids where you use more bodies to diffuse that. But yeah. They're cool fish, man. They've got a subtle pattern that just is something that the eye picks up really well. and some coloration that the eye picks up really well that like doesn't even show on camera all that great. I've really been enjoying them when I see them like plowing around in the guppy mansion in the mornings when I'm feeding all the fish, and they're doing a good job like cleaning up some algae in that tank too. It's been hard to find an algae eater that won't eat baby fish in the guppy mansion because there's a million babies all the time. So it's one of those things where I don't want my baby population to get impacted because I just want to always have a robust number of fish in that tank. But at the same time, I kind of want something beyond just my autosynclus to help handle some of the algae that occur in there because it gets a lot of sunlight in the summer. Like right now, there's kind of an algae explosion in a few places, and I definitely need those fish in there to help control stuff and keep it a little more chill. Yeah, the Dodge diesels are nice. Hey man, you know what? I know we're going like way off the rails when it comes to fish. Let me tell you what I basically grew up in. Okay, my dad for the longest time had the '80s Ford like Rangers and F-150s. You know, like the square body. Sometimes you might call it like an OBS truck, right? Depending on like how deep into the car game you are, but I love those things. I love those things to death. That particular style or like 50s Chevy trucks are one of the most beautiful automobiles ever created in my mind. I think they're gorgeous. This is a big like rounded bumper flares and all that kind of stuff. I think they are beautiful. I had a friend who had one in high school. I was ultra jealous of him. I remember my very first car I ever owned was an 89 Firebird XS in black because I was a big Knight Rider fan as a kid. I was jealous of the guy who had that truck. I had like a car that was out of the TV show I loved as a kid. A car that I was telling myself like I want one of those cars so much. I saw that truck and I wanted that truck way more than my car. And I'm like, it sounds terrible, I know, but it's one of those things where like I grew up on certain things, and the only thing I will say about diesel right now is, good Lord, diesel is expensive in my area. Good Lord, it's expensive. And repairing them can be a pain in the butt if you're not savvy enough to repair it yourself. But they're a go-to for a lot of people, man. Trucks are a go-to, especially in the States. The trucks are like the thing. But for me, like one of the things that mattered for me was I wanted kind of an SUV-ish type vehicle in case we get snow, so that I have something that can still go somewhere. Because if you could have a dusting of snow on the ground, and my Mustang was basically like, we ain't going nowhere, Chief. If you want to spin circles in a death sled, by all means try to drive, but we ain't going nowhere. You know? But the thing is, like, I wanted something that could easily and comfortably carry me, my lady, our dogs, and one or two other people. And really what that came down to is something like a Subaru, like an Outback, right? Some kind of like station wagon-y type thing, or some kind of a smaller SUV. I wanted something that had reasonable gas mileage, wouldn't cost me too much. And the biggest thing, the appeal of an electric, of course, is that they're extremely cheap to operate. They're very expensive to initially purchase, but you very rarely have to maintenance them, in the sense that there's not a lot of moving parts, so it's very likely that you have problems with them, and they cost way less day-to-day operation. But that being said, if I could own anything I wanted, there's two cars I would want. Just two. Just two. One might surprise you. That's a 72 El Camino. That's right. I like them dorky car truck things, because I grew up with them as a kid. Is the only other thing beyond those like, and my dad had like 4 different of the 80s Rangers / F-150s, but he had 2 El Caminos, and I love both of them to death. The second thing, my namesake. I want to own a Bentley, but I don't want a new Bentley. I want an old Bentley. I want a Bentley from the 50s. Because they have those like beautiful rounded fender flares. Everything I love in those like 50s trucks. You have this big coach saloon. Love them. Love them. If I could own only one thing, it'd probably be that. And it'd probably be like a lawn ornament, because it probably wouldn't run. Because they're so expensive to maintain. But man, I love a ton of that stuff. I think that's the thing. Like, I'm one of those people who as a car person, I grew up in a hot rod shop, but I didn't grow up in a Mopar shop or a Ford shop or a this. I grew up appreciating everything from Duesenbergs, right? These classic, super expensive, hard to find, like Woodies, the wood panel side trucks, Nomad satellites. If you're familiar with a Nomad, that'd be like the third thing on my list is a Nomad, which is like the most man station wagon known to man. If you were to ask me, that is. Douglas Ragsdale. What about the Ford Ranchero, their version of the El Camino? I hate the Ranchero. There is something about the El Camino because it shares the same front as the Duster and the Nova and all that looks so much better than the Ranchero. The Ranchero is like the ugly dorky brother of the El Camino, and I feel bad for it because in general a lot of my favorite cars are Fords. But God, does that thing look ugly. The Rancheros look so ugly to me. I don't know. And there's certain years of the El Camino that are hideous too. Do not get me wrong. The 72 El Camino is like the pinnacle of El Camino beauty to me. This sounds psychotic for you fish nerds if you're not into weird cars, but I know this is how you get to know how much of a crazy person I am, and all the crazy that comes together that makes this ludicrously passionate fish nerd. Regina, a 79 El Camino was behind me today for miles. Gorgeous black with white stripes. Let me tell you about the El Camino that was supposed to be my first car for a while, right? White with a black vinyl top, but it had purple, royal purple, and silver pinstripes along the side. Because my dad's a crazy person. And he did that stuff. that was his personal El Camino for a while until it broke down. It was supposed to be a whole, we rebuild the whole thing and all that. And then it turns out, the kid doesn't really like all the work about actually doing the hard stuff working on cars. And then I ended up in something completely different. Give me a 69 Gran Torino. Hey, man, great car. Great car. If I were to go that route in the muscle or pony car era, I'm a Mustang guy through and through. I would want a 67 GT 500 KR Shelby Mustang, king of the road. Now, of course, you could go really excessive and be like, I want a Hemi Cuda convertible and the manual stick shift. There's only 4 of them. They're worth $3 million. GTO 65 V-dub bug. Yo, I want a 63 split window if you're going that route. Yeah? Gotta appreciate the split window. They're the icon. Chevelle C, we're all fish people. Oh, Aquaman drives a 94 Acura Integra. Dude, Acuras, Hondas, same thing, right? Seriously, if you take care of those cars, they don't die. They just don't die. It's incredible. Toyotas are in the same boat. If you take care of them, go forever. I'll tell you a funny story. There's a guy that my mom works with. He put on his Toyota Camry, and I think it was an 80s Toyota Camry, over 400,000 miles on that car. The local Toyota dealership out there gave him a brand new, top of the line, every option you could ever ask for, Toyota Camry a couple years ago, to trade for that one car so that they could put the 400,000 mile Camry in their showroom to show, if you take care of it, this is how long it lasts. Crazy. I have 200,000 miles on my Mustang, and I can feel it, right? I know the difference. 400,000 miles seems impossible to me, because I'd have to drive that car for 30, at least another 15 more years to get that much mileage out of it. It's just wild to me. Cal Barton, thanks for the help with the Staghorn. Slowly killing it. CPDs are okay. Shrimp are okay. Can I put Black Tiger Darios? Whoa. Woo! I'd be careful. So any of the Darios, right? Any of those guys, they can be a little aggressive. Now they can be shy too, But what I would worry about is your Darios picking off the baby Neocaridina, because they can and they will. Now they have small mouths, but they'll still pick at them, and that can kill them. That being said, if you have enough hides and stuff, they're going to spend a lot of time hiding in plants and having little territories to where it is possible. It just depends on how robust the overall colony is inside that tank. Now, if you have a smaller colony of shrimp, there's a chance that you can run some risk of the long-term health of the colony. But if you have tons and tons of shrimp, you got like 50, 60 shrimp in your tank or more, you're probably okay. That being said, one of the best people to ask about Darios is in chat. Secret History Living in Your Aquarium. He's bred them. He's kept several different species of them. He could probably give you an even better answer than I can. Oh, there's somebody who I want to visit. Twin Cities Guppies recently opened his store. I'm just saying, that's why I want to visit. I want to go see that shop in person. Good Kang Lee, what's up, bud? Came at right at the tail end, my friend. Slowly dripping the plants of Florist Excel. Yeah, dude, perfect. Syringe was overdosing them. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, it super depends on how everything's going, how much you can control. But yeah, good to hear that that's helping. Yeah, Brian Scott. Okay, Bentley, there's no way we sat together at lunch. I'm a Chevy man through and through. Yeah, but I like Chevy. Yeah, I like Chevys too. Like, that's the thing. I like Ford, but I like Chevy. I like Dodge. I like Chrysler. I like Bentley. I like Rolls-Royce. I like Ferrari. I like Lamborghini. I like Porsche. I don't like Peugeot. I don't like Saab. I honestly, I have a big appreciation for almost all cars. Is this a fish channel? That's a great question. That's a great question. Is this a fish channel? Yes, technically. But everything goes crazy in a live stream. You're at the whim of whatever tangent I go on. It's just really how it rolls. When I run out of questions, tangent land we go. Yeah, Cal. No, he's definitely got some Darios. So there you go. Alex is answering what Bentley said is spot on. Tiger Badass are more peaceful than Scarlet Reds. That's good to know. I hybridized the two just recently, and they are freaking terrors. Oh, so don't hybridize them. That's good to know. Good to know. Oh boy. Make sure I didn't miss anything. We're at the tail end. We got Dr. Black coming up in roughly 5 minutes. So, I think that's probably a good place to start. We've babbled about cars, a website, fish stores. This has been a little off the rails. Paul Soltero's got a comment. We got to get this one there. Give me a Porsche and a 50s, 60s Resto Mod short bed Ford or Chevy pickup, and I'm good to go. Specifically the short bed, huh? Me too. I'm kind of in that boat. Like, I love the short bed trucks, especially the 50 Chev trucks. Like I've said, 50 Chev short bed is just a work of art to me. And yeah, Porsches are nice. Certain Porsches. I like older ones more than most of the modern ones, although certain modern ones are really cool. I like Targas. For those that are Porsche fans, I like the Targas specifically just because they have a very iconic look. But, yeah, man. If any of those, like, crazy supercars, I start kind of going, it's a little much for me. But, yeah, you know, it's one of those things where everybody has their jam when it comes to cars. The thing that matters to me is, can we all just appreciate what we have and what we want? You can want the world. Oh, Mercedes is the all-around best. Ooh, I'd have some words with that. I've seen far more Mercedes issues than, say, BMW. But I think both of them are pains in the butt because their repairs are ridiculously expensive. And overall, I've seen Toyotas and that kind of stuff last way longer. But what do you do? Mercedes are the best at breaking down. I will say this, man. Mercedes have one of the most iconic cars ever, though. They got the gull wing and those doors, man. They're a beauty. They're a beauty. But if I'm going to go that route, if I'm going to go like European classic cars, especially, if it's sports, because like I said, I love 50s Bentleys and Rolls Royces. They look the same. They're beautiful. Jaguar E-Type. It's one of the most beautiful cars ever made. I don't know anybody who looks at a Jaguar E-Type and doesn't go, yeah, that looks nice. It looks real nice. Anyway. Woo. Let's get off. We'll go back to fish for just a minute. Coming up next, Dr. Black. Let me get a link for those who want to just roll the party back to fish and less about me babbling about cars. Ay, right? It's okay. This is how we roll, man. It's gotta go crazy. But my friend Dr. Black, he's coming up next. You could have a beverage with the man. I would. If I went down to Australia, I'd be having a beverage with Dr. Black. You know it. Guys, thank you so much. I hope you've had fun. I hope you've enjoyed this like psychotic ramble. But I'll see you guys next Tuesday for the usual same bat time, same bat channel, all that good news. As always, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome.